have what we call the mathematical practices. That's another component of the Common Core. So if somebody says, what do you know about math in the Common Core? You can say, well, there are 8 mathematical practices. And it has nothing to do with how well you add or multiplication tables. But let me describe for you what the mathematical practices are and see how much you hear about numbers. The first category is about mindset, making sense of problems and persevering through them. Attend to precision. Did you hear anything about addition, subtraction, division, fractions? It's about mindset and thinking, I can do math. I can be successful at this. So many of our students and even adults shy away from, I'm not good at math. That's a mindset. And whether you admit it or not, it affects how you attack a problem and whether or not you think you can get through it. So mathematical practices, making sense of problems, persevering through them. The green one up here, it says reasoning and explaining. Reason abstractly and quantitatively. Construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. So back to that shepherd problem. We want to teach our students to advocate for themselves and say, I don't have enough information to solve this problem. Not just give up and start adding the numbers together and hope you arrive at something that's correct, because that number will appear in the multiple choice answers, so I'm going to go there. And by the way, did you know that our state assessments used to be set up that way? They would purposefully take all the numbers out of problems, add them up for those students who thought that's what they were supposed to do. So you would see incorrect answers, but they would equal all the numbers in the problem, added up or subtracted or multiplied. Our students have to critically think through that. We want them to create a viable argument to say, this is the information I need to solve this problem. Since I don't have it, I can't solve it. The next two in the middle, right here, modeling and using tools. How do you model with mathematics, and how do you use appropriate tools strategically? Do I need a calculator? Do I need a ruler? Do I need manipulatives? Do I need none of those to answer this question? So look at all that preparation that's taking place before you even get into the problem. What tools do I need? How am I going to solve it? The last one on the bottom down here, seeing structure and generalizing. Look for and make use of a structure. Look for and express regularity in repeated reasoning. Kindergarten through 12th grade, the same mathematical practices we will be using on our students. We will be implementing in the classroom, because that has a kindergarten level and it has a high school level. Let me show those to you in a couple slides. So what we have to do is really rethink our classrooms. But we also have teachers to bring along. So it takes a lot of professional development, it takes a lot of professional learning, and time for teachers to grasp this, because they've learned one way and taught one way, and now we're asking them to make some changes. So what we have up here, and I'm not going to take you through this problem, but we have some questions, and I want to show you a before and an after scenario. The same ones that our students are experiencing. This is a continuum that I wanted to show you. So in kindergarten, counting and cardinality. Those mathematical practices, what do they look like in kindergarten? Well, counting. 0 to 100, can you get them in the right place? If I start you at 49, do you know how to go to 50? If I say to count by fives, can you skip all the odd numbers? When you go into first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, now we're going to talk about number and operations and bases of 10. All of these in blue are expectations for our Common Core, but you can see on this map where they fall by grade level. All of this prepares them for high school, geometry, algebra, some physics, statistics, probability, calc. They have to be ready for that. And it's not that we were doing a bad job, just like the 1995 Civic. It's not a bad car. We just have something better now because we've learned so much. So the Common Core just isn't math. It is every content area. I just wanted to focus on one versus jumping around. You know, we have social studies, we have science, we have English language arts. Let's talk a little bit about English language arts. It used to just be reading. Reading was the important task and skill that we wanted our students to walk away with. Common Core is now more than just reading. It's reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Because all of those lead to effective communication. We're not saying one is more important than the other, but all of those are components of an effective communicator. So here's where we get to play around a little bit. On the left side is a former question from the retired standards, so the old state standards. Read the following poem. It says, at night in dream I travel from my bed. On wing of light I soar across vast skies. Where colors swirl and dance and mingle and soar, too far beyond the veil where a phoenix flies. Okay, so this is an actual question from state tests that our students have taken. So, their task is to, which words from the poem's first stanza tells the reader that these stanzas are written in the first person? And here are the choices. Phoenix and sky, night dreams, beyond across, I and my. Well, which one would it be? Okay, letter D. Fairly simple, wasn't too hard to figure out, didn't really have to think too much. New question. This is what our students have to prepare for. The following is a rough draft of a paragraph that a student is writing for the school newspaper. Relevancy. Kids are going to connect. School newspaper, I get that. I'm on the newspaper. I can't, but I'm going to read it to you. So the question is, the following is a rough draft of a paragraph that a student is writing for the school newspaper about why there should be a longer school day. Another piece of relevancy. We've hooked the kids. Longer school day? What? I don't want that. Now I'm going to dig into this a little more. The draft needs more details to support the students' reasons for having a longer school day. So, they read this, why there should be a longer school day. It's a draft. It says, now look at the following daily schedule for a school that has switched to a longer school day. Here's the question. Revise the paragraph by adding details from the daily schedule that help support the reasons for having a longer school day. I'm not simply coming up here and going, first stanza, I and my, done. Letter D. I have to read. I have to critically think. I have to create a viable argument, and I have to write. That's the change our students have to make. Which potential employee would you want to hire to work for your firm creating a viable argument? Somebody who can pick out multiple choice really well, who has to sit and process, write and think, and create an argument. I think I know your answer. Let's try a math one. Retired standards. A 4th grade class found 9 boxes of glass beads in the supply cupboard. There are 376 beads per box. How many glass beads does the class have in all? What are we going to do?
I'd multiply.
Okay. How lucky for me. I only have 2 numbers written out. If I skip the 4th, and don't get confused about that, I can take 9 times 376. Hopefully I know how to multiply. I look for A through D that, somewhat comes close to what I came up with on my paper, and I'm good. Okay? New style of question. A rectangle is 6 feet long and has a perimeter of 20 feet. What is the width of this rectangle? It kind of sounds like the first one, but we're not done. Explain how you solve the problem. So I don't get to just multiply, pick the answer, move on, fill in the bubble, circle it. I now have to write why I came up with my answer, why I took those 2 numbers times each other, can create my explanation. Hopefully one thing you've noticed with the math example is we're working harder to integrate our contents. So math isn't just about math. Math is about English language arts and communication. Because I'm probably not going to sit in a room all day and do math problems. I'm going to have to talk about my math problems on my project to my team as we create a product that we're going to try to go out and sell. So what should our classrooms look like? Well, this top one up here, I hope you can see. Students are working in groups. Students are using technology because we have multiple sources of information, not just the teacher. One of my favorite quotes is, who's the smartest person in the room? It's the room. The collectivity, the knowledge, everybody in the room. So when our teachers are teaching our students now, we're accessing all of that information and resources in the room. Students are resources for each other. Digital media is a resource. Print material is a resource. The teacher is a resource. But you see our students now working in small groups and problem solving and talking each other into or out of. This is not about the shepherd. Stop thinking about the shepherd. And they have to have that conversation between them. That's called student discourse. And when student discourse increases, particularly in math, learning skyrockets. If we aren't letting our students talk through the problems, we are restricting their learning. Versus what we don't want our students to walk away feeling like. So here's a little cartoon. The big picture is the teacher, student at the desk. Justin wrote this, and Justin said, math is when you add or subtract numbers and your teacher will make sure you have the right answer. Where's the teacher going to be when Justin's at home and he's got to figure out the right answer on whether or not the bank made a deposit incorrectly or not? How will he create a viable argument? So our level of math proficiency has to increase. Our level of learning has to increase. We are trying to prepare our students for college and career-ready standards for our employers and our communities that need problem solvers. They need critical thinkers. They don't need multiple choice test takers. So I'm going to turn it over to you now and see what questions you have.
Do you think colleges are preparing teachers to perform college core teaching? Or
What was the last part of that again?
Do you think teachers, or do you think schools of education, universities, are preparing teachers to be the kind of teacher you're talking about?
Having been a graduate of KU, K-State, and Fort Hays across this state, I will say we're not there yet. I will say that we are scratching the surface of what's needed, but we have to get a closer connect between what's happening in our classroom and what's happening in our methods classes.
So why isn't it happening? Is it resistance to Common Core?
I don't think it's resistance to Common Core personally. What I think it is a separation from reality and what's happening in the classrooms and what our students need to know and be able to do when they graduate. It's really easy to, and I'm an adjunct professor right now. I've taught at the college level for several years. It's easy to fall back onto my lesson plans. And if I am not in touch with what our teachers need to be doing in the classroom, if I don't have a foot in a regular classroom that's public education, that's K-12, then I can't bring relevancy to my methods courses. And I'm not saying that higher ed doesn't want to. We want to. And we're working very closely. You know, we have a great partnership with KU. We have over 45 to 50 action research projects going on right now. Getting in, and I think Dr. Ginsburg has visited several of our classrooms and we've had a lot of conversation. They are recognizing that we need to produce a different level of professional educator. Certain colleges move at different paces with that because that's a bigger system, and having that connect with the classroom to me is the biggest piece. So It is happening, not at the pace that I would like to see, because I think we're going to have a shortage of teachers coming up pretty soon, because we have a very seasoned profession, and kids are coming out of college and just starting to understand, what that new student looks like. So it takes a strong partnership. We're just not quite there yet.
It seems to me that the language that you were using was mostly Latinate or conceptual, and that the earlier language was more concrete. Would you agree to that?
So you're picking that up from the examples?
Yes.
Yeah, so much more concrete right there, aha, and more conceptual and abstract is where we're headed. So very astute, yes, I would agree with that.
You really can't learn what poetry is with conceptual language.
Okay. Nobody said we were going to stop learning poetry. Poetry is still part of the reading, writing, listening, and speaking. But how do we move beyond that? How do we get our students writing their own poetry? How do they infer from poetry? How do they create Bible arguments about poetry? So it's enhancing. Remember what I said earlier, what we're doing? Is it wrong? The 1995 Civic, was it wrong? We've just learned enough now that we can make it better. So how do we take poetry to the next level? And I've seen a lot of abstract and conceptual poetry. It's not all concrete. No? Yes?
This is not so much a question as a comment.
Okay.
I went to school basically, started in 1949. It was my first year in preschool. And I went to a private school. I discovered when I was later on, when I was a school bus driver in the Blue Valley School District, and I was taking a rest during the summer in the teacher's lounge because it was too hot to wait outside. And I would look through a book. They had some books that were under consideration for the next school year in there for the teachers to look through. Well, I looked in one of these books. In this case, it happened to be the history book. And I looked at what they were doing. This was high school level, mind you. It was essentially the same thing that I had learned in 4th grade. And I thought, what in the world is going on here? And also, a lot of what you're talking about right now, about the critical thinking and whatnot, we learned that in school when we were in about 4th or 5th grade. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, it was a necessary part. If you didn't have it, you couldn't deal with it. And
So what shocked you so much about the history book being pretty much the same as it was when you were younger?
I later on heard somebody use the term about dumbing down, and I think that had happened at that point.
Okay.
I might add, I went to a private school.
Okay.
My last 3 semesters at the University of Kansas, I began to catch on that I learned better if I now know the key word. I didn't know it then. When I collaborated with my fellow students in the same class, and we would arrange little huddles, and we would chew on the material. And I brought that to seminary and really made it an art form. We would be in groups of 6, 7, or 8, and we really dug in. My question is, will the new teachers with this design, will they really reinforce a collaborative spirit in the classroom so that they're really working together to solve problems or whatever you say in the subject? Is that going to happen?
That's what we support through our professional development. Some people come in to teaching and they understand the important components and the pieces that need to be in the classroom, and others haven't quite grasped it. So as an assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, it's my responsibility to make sure that our teachers have the support, the models, and are able to observe it effectively, like to step into your classroom and see you huddling and working in small groups. excuse me, so they can understand how much further that will move learning. Just like students in our classroom, they don't all come to us with the same level of understanding, so we have to be prepared to differentiate. If somebody needs a concrete example with poetry that helps them grasp the concept, the teacher needs to be prepared to have that. But right next to you may be somebody who needs it abstractly or not so concrete to help you understand. It's about widening our options. So back to collaboration. Not all content can probably be delivered effectively in collaborative groups. There are some things that you need everybody's attention at one time because the information is that important and they all need to hear it together. So we're talking about expanding the strategies in the classroom and using more of what we know produces the results and the better learning like you talked about. So yes, our teachers more than likely are experiencing that now in higher ed. I think it will continue to grow, but our responsibility as a support staff is to help model and continue to provide that in professional development. So when we bring them in for professional development, rarely do I stand and deliver like this because that's not the model I want them to use in their classroom. So whenever we provide learning opportunities, we make sure we model what we would like to see in the classrooms as well, because the learner isn't just the student. The learners are our teachers too. And effective teachers are continuously learning.
My daughter's a middle school math teacher, and so she's exposed to some of the Common Core stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I was a bit surprised, but she's just extraordinarily excited about it because she thinks it gives her a kind of leverage in teaching math that she's not had before.
Excellent.
What she and I don't understand is the political opposition to core. How do you understand that? Because there's a huge.
Yeah, huge movement.
What is that about? How do you understand that?
Again, this is me speaking personally
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it, so I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
representing anybody else.
Right.
I think it's just fear of the unknown. When you have national anything, it starts to feel federal, it starts to feel like people's hands are in the pot and kind of telling you what to do. I've heard terms like Big Brother, or the man, telling me what I need to teach in my classroom. It feels that we don't retain the autonomy as teachers or educators, and maybe our parents are weighing in too. It feels kind of scary that all students have to learn the same thing. We lose that personalization, so fear of the unknown, loss of personalization, when actually I think the personalization increases. So whenever I get an opportunity to talk about the Common Core like this, I try to help people understand what the facts are so you can make an informed decision on whether you support it or not. But I think it's fear of the unknown.